Which country in the world do you think is the richest if you ignore all the state-sanctioned over-glorifying propaganda? That's right, Congo. Located in the heart of Africa, home to a highly diverse population of 90 million with at least 250 different ethnicities, the Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the largest countries in Africa with a rich, prosperous and happy history. Or is it? You see, the history of Congo is indeed rich, just not that kind of rich. Beginning in the 18th century, European colonizers, particularly the Belgians under King Leopold II, established their colony in the Congo solely for the purpose of extracting rubber and ivory from the Congolese. They are often considered one of the most exploitive colonies in history of colonialism, which is a pretty daring feat considering the other colonies by the other European powers that were also contenders at the time. But all this is in the beginning of the colony of Congo. We'll come back to it later. As for the Congo we know today, it is still in a very much shaky socio-economic position. After almost 2 centuries of oppression carried out by the colonizers, how could that be, you may ask? Resources. You see, Congo has always been rich in resources that are of utility to all of humanity. 70% of the world's cobalt is found in Congo, which is an essential thing for batteries and pretty much all the electronics we use. A resource called coltan, which is another thing found in electronics and is not found anywhere else in the world. Oh, and not to mention rare substances like gold and other minerals. Couple that with the historically unconsolidated socioeconomic power, you get a perfect recipe for foreign powers sensing your weakness and invading to intimidate. Or worse, steal the resources at the expense of your people that are inhabiting the land. This has always been the key problem for Congo. Starting in the 18th century, with the Belgian colonizers finding out about the existence of ivory and rubber, one of the key trade materials at the time, or right after the independence during the Cold War, when 2 foreign powers, especially the NATO and Soviet Union, had their fair share of supporting the dictators to secure their access to the various resources Congo has to offer. The existence of such resources also makes running the existing systems of governance extra hard, as any other rebel group with a better offer to the foreign governments willing to support them might overthrow you anytime. Something seen in Congo's history oftentimes, just such as when, after independence, the very first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, was assassinated with the involvement of very similar power plays. So then what exactly is the problem with having too much resources anyways? Resource curse is cited by a lot of academics and popularists to be the sole reason that's holding Congo back from achieving its full potential. You see, diversity is not always a good thing, especially when it results in dispersion of political power over vast swaths of land containing literal coal mines. Which is why it's reasonable to say that Congo, referring to it as a monolith, was never in a good position to achieve its full potential and become a political and economic power to begin with. Extreme availability of resources triggered a cycle of constant power struggles, wherein different factions fought to secure the favor of competing foreign powers by giving them access to resources in exchange for money and weapons. So to maintain status quo was a task unimaginably hard, even more so than maintaining peace in the Balkans. Okay, maybe that's a stretch. But you get the point. One could argue such dire status quo of the people, politics and economics involved was bound to result in the prolonged misery we see in Congo's history. That's not to say that there's no sense of national unity, and people have tried that. It's worked sometimes, like when it gained independence, but it never truly lasted as a stable, prosperous nation. The profit from mining rich resources, for example, is often diverted to political elites, again installed by foreign powers most of the times, or directly to foreign companies, leaving next to nothing for domestic infrastructure and social service. Artisanal mining causes massive chaos, environmental destruction, and forces many to work extremely dangerous, low-paying jobs. Considering all of this, contemporary governments have relied mostly on foreign exports for economic stability. Too much. And too much of anything is bad, because reliance on foreign exports, especially when it's literally more than 70%, can leave you vulnerable to global price fluctuations, resulting in even more misery in times of market instability. Moving on to the political side of things, armed factions control many of Congo's mining areas, using the profit from mining as funds for ongoing wars, especially in eastern regions. The FDLR, or Mai, for example, control at least 40% of the trade routes and economic zones in the eastern region, with a history of chaotic activity such as enforcement of arbitrary martial law, or basically a curfew, and a long trail list of human rights abuses. The minerals in these areas, mostly identified to be gold, coltan, and tungsten, are literally classified by many organizations as conflict minerals, meaning their presence is bound to result in conflict and a plethora of other complex political problems like corruption. It is also estimated that this cycle of misery has been ramped up since the technological revolution in the early 2000s because the demand for the resources rose to an all-time high. Multinational corporations, especially from the West, benefit from the resources of Congo more than the people of Congo themselves. Firstly, because an average Congolese does not have the influence nor the power to dictate fair trade deals, even if he may want change in the system. And of course, the leaders are often puppets under a facade of democracy. Life is already over the moment you were born in Congo. Because A, you're being taken care of by a government your people never elected, and B, because all your hard work, whether mental or physical, is ultimately benefiting the outsiders since Congo does not even have the adequate infrastructure to effectively use the material your work brings about. So, can Congo still escape this cycle of misery and tap into that potential and perhaps cancel out all the mistakes and wrong moves from the past? Probably. There have been international efforts made to break this pattern, but they face major obstacles. In 2010, the United States passed the Dodd-Frank Act, which is basically a regulation making it necessary for corporations to disclose the origin of minerals they've traded. Which sounds pretty good until you realize the corporations can simply source the mineral from other countries instead of improving the extraction practices in Congo, ultimately being of detriment to the local miners whose livelihood depends on mining. The European Union passed similar laws. But yeah, enforcement is tricky because no one faction can be trusted at the end of the day. An average Congolese worker barely earns $2 a day compared to the world average of $10, which is not any better because the data is skewed, which again supports the incentive for foreign entities like companies and countries to keep them poor and continue the status quo of extremely cheap mining, resulting in one of the many cycles of misery Congo is facing and has faced throughout its history. Erasing corruption from the government, though, has been quite promising, as we have seen the Congolese government, at least the official one, take actions like suing major corporations that take advantage of their resources. The entire world, you see, depends on the Congo, but the Congo gets nothing in return. Why and when do you think the current state of the people in Congo would change? What are your thoughts? Let me know down in the comments. Subscribe if you liked my video, and you can always unsubscribe later. Thank you so much for watching.